If you're a busy professional who feels like they just never have enough time for fitness, I'd like to introduce you to Antonios and tell you a little bit about how we integrated fitness into his busy schedule. He lives in New York, he's a transplant surgeon, and part of his work often means that he's called upon at short notice to come in and do up to 10-hour surgeries. So naturally, finding time for health and fitness has always been difficult. It's been a frustration of Antonios over the years. He's tried workout magazines, workout programs, and even had a couple of in-person personal trainers and never really made anything work for the long term. But we found his solution because we were able to get a personalized approach to fitness that worked for his schedule, personalized meal plans, and a weekly shopping list that just pretty much took all of the guesswork out of the proposition for Antonios, and he was able to make health and fitness really work despite his busy schedule. In terms of what we were able to achieve, we went from 205 pounds to 195 pounds with increased visible muscularity, and his body fat dropped to an impressive 12%, which is really the gateway to visible abs. He also increased his chest and arm measurements, and he experienced consistent energy levels throughout the day, even during those long surgeries. He also reported feeling that he had more focus and was able to deal with stress much better. So let's bring Antonius into the conversation and we'll explore his journey in more detail, and you might be able to pull out some insights as to how you can achieve similar results despite a challenging schedule.
I do mostly liver and kidney transplants and some other surgeries. And I've been doing this for almost 15 years now, including my training is a little bit more than that. I've been living in New York for the last 15 years. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. I grew up in Greece.
What was it that first drew you? What was it? When did you first get the idea? I'm gonna one move to America and second choose that city.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story, which I also like to say here to my residents sometime, or people who are like me and they come from another country and they want to work here. I've always been attracted to New York City before I even visited. Reading about it, reading in the newspaper about things that were happening in New York, seeing movies about New York, I had this this sense of how it is to be here, and I was always very attracted to it. So when I decided that I'm going to pursue a career in medicine here in the US, of course, in my mind was only New York City that I would do that. And I picked actually the programs that I would apply in merely because they were like in the middle of New York City. I work at Mount Sinai Hospital, which is one of the biggest hospitals now in New York, and it's really next to Central Park. But funny enough, back then my criterion was not that it's a big program and a great hospital. It was just that it's in the middle of Manhattan, which doesn't sound very a career responsible career decision, but it turned out to be was also a very good program. So that's how the decision was made. And what I like to say is that after, many times you may imagine something and you have an idea about something might be in the future, but then when you actually do it, many times you feel that you had kind of overblown it in your mind and it wasn't as fun or exciting as you thought. And it happens many times in many things. We have this tendency to fantasize and then something we don't have to make it bigger in our minds. And then when it happens, we realize it was just okay. It was just okay. What I say about New York, for me, it was even better when I actually experienced it than I had imagined it would be, which is something that I'm very happy about.
Yeah, I had the experience in New York where it's same in LA, but I would say probably more in New York, where the first time you go there, you're walking around and you're recognizing, like coming from a European background, you're recognizing things like, oh, that's from that movie, or that's from that music video, and that's from that. And it's you do really feel a set. There is an energy there. There's a sense of this is a grand place, like, and you recognize so much.
I agree. There's a lot of places you recognize from obviously movies and things you might have read. But also it is, I like to call it that in my mind, New York is actually real life itself. Nothing is really polished and made pretty in a way that to look pretty. And also because there's so many people around, you have every different type of characters and personalities around you. For me, when I actually, the first day I was here, it felt extremely familiar, not because of the movies I had seen and the what I have read about it, which of course it's a big factor, but I remember I was walking somewhere in Times Square and there was like this huge traffic jam that it's always there. And the traffic light was green, it was red. And of course, the cross section was full of cars that they have crossed the red light. And now they were blocked there. So no cars would cross the crossway because the other cars were coming, and no pedestrians could walk by because it was a huge mess. And for me, that reminded me of Athens. I'm like, oh, I'm home, because it was like so familiar picture. Like everybody's like upset and yelling at the car drivers were there. And I'm sure that's not common for like many European cities, which are everything is like as it should be. But for me, that was my first experience.
So yeah, okay. So it was like a familiar sense of almost controlled chaos, that kinetic energy
Correct.
of the city. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. And then one of the things that I think is a big gift of the city to the people who are here, if you can make it, is like if you can get past these things and you develop a certain of mindfulness thought, and you don't really pay attention to things like that, and these things don't really bother you anymore. I think it's one of the things that makes you a stronger person mentally. Like I'm not upset anymore if I see someone crossing a red light. I'm not getting angry. I know it can happen, and there are 9 million people who live in this place. Some people will do it, and I think it creates in a way certain like peace, inner peace, if you are able to go past that first shock of look what people do here and there.
Mm, yeah, life in the metropolis.
Yes.
So that when sort of you started to take on life there, what was the differences that you found from Greece and America in general?
Um, so, when I started here, I didn't really have that much time to observe the differences in life because I was in training. Everything was new in the way that things were happening here in medicine. I'm talking, so it was a very intense first few years trying to adjust to the new way of doing medicine and actually survive the training of a transplant fellow that I was. So I didn't really have that much of social life, obviously. But I can tell you that in the medicine part, there were many, many different things between how we do things here and how we were doing in Greece. Again, what I would say the more striking difference is like the intensity of the workload that we had here and the pace of the work. So that was my first comparison, I would say, between Greece and New York, because my whole work, the first few years, was just actually work. I wasn't really going out, and my daily trips was from my apartment to the hospital, which was like 2 blocks apart. So that was actually my life the first couple of years.
And then what was sort of from a health and fitness perspective, did you notice sort of cultural differences between Greece and America in terms of how people treated health? Health
Yes.
from a purely health perspective, but then also health from a health and fitness perspective.
Yes. Again, between Greece and New York, I would say. Yes, I could notice a big difference when I start noticing things around me. I lived and live close to Central Park. So every time I would cross Central Park, I would always see people running, people of all ages, people of all shapes, which I wasn't that used to see that back home. Also, I would start noticing that people were like they looked kind of fit, like in fairly good shape, and of course that doesn't negate the problem we know that there is in Western countries and the US with obesity. And we see people who are overweight, and the percentage is very high. But the people I would come across with, like other doctors, other people from the hospital, of that type of people, they would talk about their times in the gym, or they would talk about running a marathon. So things that wasn't that common when I was back home. So definitely I started realizing slowly that it's much more ingrained in their daily life in the city, some type of fitness program, either just running in the park or going to the gym and things like that.
And it's interesting in New York because it's not that one is going to be on show, particularly because it's like London. It's quite a cold place. In it's not like California. It's, you know, those kind of places where just by definition you're out and about on the beach and things like that. It's more of it's almost like a manifestation of a personality trait in New York in the same way that it is in London.
Correct. Absolutely. You know, the winter in New York also can be very brutal. So it's not that people are out because it's a nice weather. It's because it's part of the New York City living, for sure. Like I see people running in the park when it's -10. It's never, you know, empty. And you can see people doing classes in the park, even in the winter, like yoga and things like that. You always see things. Bikers all the time.
What would you say? When would you say that was like almost like to think of it as everybody has their own story with fitness? So
yeah,
your profession is health. So where did you sort of become aware of your own health journey and your own fitness journey, and maybe the sort of the intersection between those two things?
A fitness journey. I always actually. I wasn't into fitness at all in my high school years or in my medicine school years, for a variety of reasons. I also have my own personal adverse childhood experiences. I'm gay, and growing up in a working class suburb in Greece back when I was working up wasn't very a conducive environment to fully develop myself. So mostly those years were spend my energy and my mental energy how to be able to keep my sanity and be able to develop the person I want to be and get into med school and all the stuff, despite all the adversities that my sexuality was creating around me. And I sort of never felt that fitness was for me. However, I was never like obese or anything. I was always thin, but I was never like working out or doing any type of sport. And that was also a reaction of mine because sports at school were traditionally linked to other boys, and I didn't want to have to do anything with that particular groups because they were the groups that I had the most negative experience. So I was kind of doing my own thing during school, but no sports, no outdoor activities, just studying and trying to keep, like I said, my sanity in that environment. So the fitness situation started happening more when I moved to New York, because for me, the trip to New York it turns out, wasn't just that that because New York City is what it is and it's the city that is the metropolis and everything. But I think the fact that I'm gay played a huge factor. Wanted to move here because it's well known that New York City, no matter what you like to do, no matter who you like to be, you can be, and there will be thousands of other people doing the same thing with you. So you don't feel isolated in any way. And of course, open-minded, and the history of LGBTQ community in New York was always very fascinating to me. So that was another reason. So along with me moving here for my career, I felt also the minute I landed here that actually I can make more authentic decisions for myself and actually look inside myself and see also what are the things I like to do, apart from the things I knew already I like to do. And it came very naturally that I started running in the beginning in the park. Then there was a colleague of mine here who had a bicycle, and I hadn't biked in New York since I was a kid. And I started borrowing his bicycle and doing, bike around Central Park. And that slowly started coming back to myself, as we call it, and realizing that, this is something I like to do. And then I started, joined the gym here, actually YMCA initially, which was on Park Avenue. Even though I was so busy, especially the first year, I would try to find some time to go to the gym or do for a bike ride. That's how it started.
And what made it sort of the running would be the first? Was that sort of running was the lowest barrier to entry?
Yes,
Activity that could be done.
Yeah, it was because it was very easy. The park was like 1 block from my apartment. I loved the park. It was beautiful. So running had a lot of things good and practically easy for me to do. I would put my music and I would go for half an hour and I would just look around as I'm running and I would take it all in. And then I would feel so much more energized after. And I started realizing slowly what it means to do some exercise, like how important it is for your mental health. And I was always in much better mood after. I would work better. And all of these things were coming in big doses because I was allowing myself to actually exploring what I really like, not what I felt that would keep me more protected from other people's judgment or like it was when I was back home.
So you think in a different environment through your adolescence, you'd have been more active. You didn't really have access to that part of your personality didn't feel safe to express in that particular environment, and it was in New York.
100%. 100%.
And then what was the experience of then? It's just fascinating to go to sort of your first weight training session. So how does that look?
Yeah, that's also. I don't remember exactly how it was my first training session. It was on the YMCA here, but I was again because I had this whole thing that I have to be sure that how I look to people when I do things. That was the leftover from my childhood back home. Yeah, I remember I was kind of nervous when I went first time to do weights. And I was thinking, oh, I shouldn't do too much because then what if I cannot lift it and people will laugh at me and things like that. So it was I was playing it safe as I had been doing all my life. So I started kind of slowly, but I was mostly, I think, looking what other people were doing and taking some ideas. And then I would incorporate those ideas in my next workout. I think that's how I started. Then I started getting, I would buy a magazine back then. And there was the internet too, but I would buy a magazine, those magazines that talk about bodybuilding or talking about weightlifts, and they were giving some type of workouts, and I started doing this. And that's how I did for the good amount of first couple of years. By myself, no trainer, just going there whenever I had some time and doing that.
What I've noticed, sort of, I work with quite a few people in the medical profession, or I would say it carries over a little bit to other professions like law and things of that nature, where sort of by definition, to be in the position you're in today, you had to have excelled in academia. And that means that sort of when you're faced with a certain protocol, like an exam or something of that nature, you have to get it right, and it has to be pretty much spot on. So when that is then a behavior that's learned. So then when you arrive at a workout and say it's 3 sets of 12, if you can't do the 3 sets of 12, it tends to be quite uncomfortable because there's quite a lot of associations with almost perfectionism.
Yes. Very good question. I think perfectionism is something that transcends obviously professions. Yes, academia and especially surgery, you have to have the expectation that things you do are perfect because the consequences can be really grave for another person if your results are not perfect. And of course, this is something that we carried again since childhood and everything, and it becomes part of who you are. And yes, I went through this, I think, a lot with my training, to the point that sometimes I would feel that I would kind of beating up myself if I wasn't finishing the whole set the way I had planned to. But I was trying to have some balances there and be a bit mindful, but that didn't happen right away. To realize that, first of all, it's not surgery. I'm doing it most for fun. Yes, I want to have results and I want to be healthy and I want to look good. But I'll try not to make this a perfectionist goal initially. Also because I was mostly using the resources were like a magazine, or then I would look online and I would take some workouts. But I knew all the time through these that, those resources are not also, it's not a textbook of medicine. So maybe I'm not going to kill myself to do exactly what they say, because first of all, I don't know where they come from. Like, okay, so I was taking them with a salt of gray. But I did have, like, the workout should be finished. Like, if I would go to the gym to do this and this and this and this, that would happen. If I wasn't finishing, then I would feel bad. And there's very, very few times I'm not finishing what I'm starting at the gym. That part I want to do. Or if I'd say this day is going to be cardio, even if I was feeling kind of bored or something, I would do it. That's how I approach everything in my life. But then within the task, if I feel that, I'm not able to do this amount of weight, I would do a little bit less. But then again, I didn't know if that was a good way and if that way I would get the same gains. Because like I said, the majority of time, the material I would use was, from a magazine or from online. And I never had like a good, like, until recently, a good coaching situation and things like that to trust and put also my perfectionist to follow that.
Yeah, and when you're following the magazines and things of that nature, there could be very excellent sort of information in there and protocols and things like that, but you'll never understand, or like you'll never have a true bearing on the context of the person who's put that in place or who was using that, or it doesn't necessarily mean that it works for us, even if it's actually on paper, an effective protocol.
Correct. And I always, maybe someone else would treat these protocols even more seriously, but I wasn't, because I knew that, first of all, I knew that I didn't know what's the purpose of this workout, if it's for more gains or for more strength or for more this. It was just, I would choose it because it looked convenient for my schedule. And I would see that it would hit pretty much all the muscles I want to do, and I would just follow it. And I was okay, because I had started from zero. So on the point where I was there, that I would do it 2-3 times a week, for me was a big progress. Now, to do it 100% right, to have the best resource for that, I wasn't there yet. So now also I was still figuring out how long I could continue this. Is it just because I just started it and I'm very enthusiastic about it, and eventually when it becomes a routine, I will not want it anymore? Or it's something that it's going to be incorporated in my life forever, sort of. Yeah.
And while this was going on, what was then the relationship to nutrition as well? Was that sort of always plugged together, or were they separate?
No, they were never. I never, up until recently, again, like we met, I never had incorporated nutrition in my, let's say, fitness journey, even when it started. I was always careful what I was eating. Actually, let me go a little bit backwards. Grew up in Greece, and with my mom and my parents and everything, we are always had Mediterranean diet. My parents are from Crete, which is well known for the Mediterranean diet. I grew up with that food, and I was eating this food and those types of recipes up until I moved to the US. But when I moved to the US, and all of a sudden I'm not home, that my mom is cooking my meals, and I'm here by myself, what can I eat? And I'm not such a great cook in Greek cuisine, but I knew for sure that I'm not gonna go and eat junk food or McDonald's and everything. It was not part of my diet before. I wasn't planning to change now. So even though I never had nutrition as so formal as nutrition and my nutrition and what I'm eating and everything, I tried to stick on what I was eating back home, even when I was here by myself and I had to make my own meals. I would always use olive oil on my meals, which I was actually bringing from Greece because my parents make olive oil from Greece. I still, 20 years out here, I'm still carrying this olive oil, and I come to Greece and I've never used anything else. So I wasn't doing anything for my fitness as for nutrition, but I was fairly careful what I was eating in general. So not eating unhealthy, not eating too much meat, not eating processed food, because it was never part of my diet before. And I kept it. Of course, this sometimes had the problems, I didn't have food most of the times for dinner. So what I'm going to eat tonight? And then I would eat like bread and olive oil, or I would eat bread and cheese, because something I was doing when I was a kid. So definitely, sometimes my meals were not the most nutritional ones. And I never also looked into calories, how much calories I'm eating during the day. And so I was never obese, but I was never also, lean. It was kind of normal.
It's almost, that's you pretty much landed in the luckiest place in the world, really, in terms of like Greece and Crete. I always enjoy going there and having the food there, because you've got the natural healthy fats. That is sort of, if you've grown up with that, you've pretty lucky, because that most a typical Western diet, that's really not as much of a sort of a staple sort of component. And then also the presence of those fats in the context of the carbohydrates lowers the glycemic index, and you've got a lot of health benefits there by default coming from the Mediterranean.
Yeah. I totally know it, and I feel very, very grateful about this.
And it's not necessarily that. Sorry, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking, it's not necessarily that it's not available in New York, that kind of food, but contextually, it must have been very intensive, your study. So how did you sort of get through that period eating well? Or was it ad hoc at that time?
Yes, like you said, there's all types of food in New York City, and you can find all types of things in London also, I'm sure, and everything. Wherever there's multicultural cities, you can find all types of cuisines. For me, initially, again, I didn't have also a lot of money to spare to also buy ready food from outside. I would just buy simple things and do instead of like cooking the whole thing, I would make a salad with fish, or I would get the chicken and I grill it, and I would make a salad again, like simple things. But I would try to have the ingredients that I used to eat back home. And then when I had a lot of time, maybe I would cook something. Like on a Saturday, I would cook a meal, one of the meals that my mom made, and I would make it for the whole week back then. So I didn't have time to do more than that. Sort of like this. But there was like I said, there were many, many evenings that it was just like bread and olive oil, or bread and cheese, because just I liked it, and I've used to do it in the past. So it wasn't, like I said, the perfect nutrition plan, but it was very close to what, material-wise at least, or ingredient-wise, what I used to be doing back home.
Okay, so then as sort of things started to unfold, and you were sort of putting food together, and you were getting involved in training, as running up to the point where we met, was there a sort of predominant challenge that you were experiencing, or
Yes.
a part of the puzzle that wasn't quite lining up?
Correct. So when we met, it was already 10 years, right, that I've been doing this and working out here and there, and I had met different people. The 2 years before we met, 2 years, I had a friend who was very muscly and big and all that stuff. And I had asked him, I'm like, do you have any workouts? Because I was had almost tried, but 10 years in now, I kind of knew all the routines that I would find on magazines. Things were getting repeated and all that. And I didn't see, I wanted my body to look a certain way. Again, I don't know if that's for the conversation we have, but one of the things that New York City has, and I don't know how that's going to sound, everything in New York City is at the superlative form. And that also applies for gay men. So gay men in New York City, I'm sure in other big cities, also come from everywhere. You can have all types of people, doctors, lawyers, waiters, and everything. But one thing I have noticed, again, me, the novice, we came from outside, I have no clue. One thing I have noticed, the majority of these people, fitness-wise, looked amazing. Like amazing, like great bodies, great looks and everything. So at some point I got into this. I'm like, but how these people make it and look like this? And when it's all around you, you get also more, you get inspired in a way that, oh, I can look better and I can have less fat, and I can, not only for the health, which is the main reason we should do it, but there is also a certain, at least in my part, there was a certain element of vanity. I want to look a little bit like these people. I don't know, see, they're all over. So I had a friend who is like this, and I asked him to give him some of his workout routines, which I used for the last 2 years before we met. But then I started getting bored with them too, because again, they didn't have something to spark my interest anymore. They didn't have something that would make sense for me, that we do this because we want to make the muscles go that direction. There was not mental challenge. So I started getting bored on that. And I had tried the personal training in New York a couple of times. But this thing is not working for me. Like someone standing in front of me when I'm working out and tell me, do it this way and do it this way, doesn't go with my personality. It's not working with my schedule. It wouldn't work. Tried it a little bit. I didn't like it, period. And then actually, I can go ahead and say how we met, I guess. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, why don't I look if I can find an online trainer that at least he can give me some ideas about workouts. Like mostly my point was like, I want more variety in the workouts I'm doing, and nothing I have tried so far gives me this. I asked my big muscle friend, I looked magazines, that was done. And so it was, I think, summer. No, I know for sure it was summer, around July, when I was in my office, and I was like, okay, for fun, I'm going to Google best online trainers. That's how I did. That's exactly what I put on Google. And boom, your name comes up first. And I was busy then. I didn't go over again to see more details. I get out of the computer, do something else and everything, but I kept it in the back of my mind. I'm like, I want to look this into better. And then I went on vacations, end of August, came back in September, and I hadn't forgotten about it. So I looked again. So again, your name would come first. There were some other people coming after, but again and again, first. And then I started reading the reviews, and then of course, and I looked at your site, and I liked very much what I saw, and that's how our journey started.
And did you have trepidation about doing things online, or actually you mentioned that you tried in-person training, and I've done in-person training for 10 years also, but it felt like a better fit for your personality to have the remote accountability and sort of the blueprint to follow in your own time.
100%. And I can elaborate more in this. The online things for me, the online thing for me is exactly how I function the best. Like, we're going to do this for the next couple of months. This is your workout you need to do. That's the reason we're doing it. So go ahead and do it, and let's see what results we have and then how it works. That's how, like I said, I like it way more than the personal in-person 3 times a week or something. Working definitely it's way more economical than having a trainer 3 times a week standing above your head when you're working out. Yeah, that's how I decided online to begin with. Now I can say why I decided to go with your online, but I don't know if that's a question further down.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
So the most important thing was that, no, there are many important things, but reading the things that they're out there on your site. First of all, there was all these articles about how the body works, about how the nutrition works, about how muscles work, about what's the goal we have when we're working out in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s. When I'm interested in something and I'm doing research, I guess that has to do with also being used to do this. I read everything. So I read everything that was on your site. And still, I think there are some things that I missed because there are a lot of information. But coming also from a medical background, I could understand that these things made sense, and they're not like, BS that maybe other people say. They were like things that made sense. And there was research there, there's studies there, which I looked up after, about intermittent fasting, about everything. So I realized that this is someone who really knows what he's doing, like you. And I could actually trust him with my health, because how you work out and what I'm going to do. It affects how I am. Like, again, I'm not young anymore. So if I start doing something wrong, I can pay the price. As you know, I'm 55 now. And also, but also what sparked me interest very much was that I saw that you had all this nutrition plan. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I was start hitting a wall, I would start getting bored of, eating kind of like similar things. Okay, healthy, but eating the same things here and there. Okay, I was start getting bored with that. I've been doing it for years, right? And then I see, oh, they also have nutrition. And then when I was looking at your site more, again, what sparked my interest was like, you have the shopping list for the week. These things are hitting very much my personality, that I'm very practical and I want solutions that can be done without crazy difficulties. I'm like, okay, they have this, and they have the shopping list. So that wouldn't be completely undoable for me, even with my schedule. And that's why I decided to contact you.
So you've kind of got a feel for that there would be a blueprint, so to speak, and if you had faith in that blueprint based on the information on the website, then you trust the process and you could sort of relax into the suggested plan. Yeah,
correct. And also, when we saw all the things about the intermittent fasting, and you have to stop eating at some point and start eating at another point. I had never done something like that, and I also like the idea to just, why don't I try something new for the first time, which is the intermittent fast, and see if I can do it, or if I can actually prepare all my meals for the whole week over the weekend. And I realized with that schedule, I had even my slightest snack was there. And initially felt stressful because I'm busy, my schedule is all over the place. But what got me to do it was exactly this. Why don't you try something for the first time? It could be fun. And then also there was this 3-month plan, right, initially. So I'm like, okay, I'll try the 3-month plan. The prices were excellent. And I'm like, even if nothing comes up, okay, I threw, I don't know, $300. I don't remember. Okay, I don't care. It's easy. I'll do it. But then after the 3 months, our results were spectacular, as you remember. So there was no way I wouldn't keep going for 2 years now, more than 2 years.
So in terms of the first sort of protocols that I was recommended, were they something different to what you'd seen in terms of the structure and the sort of the methodology behind them?
Yes. What I have seen, I hadn't looked at other people's nutritional advice because I never trusted anybody. Like I said, I would look at the magazines. I wouldn't take advice from like a magazine that talks about it. I mean, I'm not saying they're wrong or something, but I need the facts. I need the research behind things when I'm doing things. So everything was there. So the structure, since you asked me, the structure was excellent because whatever you say there, you back it up with research, which is right there. And it's correct research, is correct. And especially if you're a doctor, you can figure it out really right away. If you're not, maybe you need to do a little more work to see that all these things make sense. So the structure is excellent. The structure as for how to do your meals and all that is fantastic, works very well with me. And I did some changes on my schedule initially to be able to fit these new routines. Because the way that the things the goal is, and what I'm doing is like trying to cook all my meals over the weekend and prepare most of the things I can that can be prepared of the weekend. And then, so I had to kind of like change my weekend routines, but also being a little bit more smart and start earlier, looking what's going on. I adjusted my schedule to be able to fit it in. And though initially the first month or two, it felt like I was having another responsibility to take care of. And that is, prepare your meals and finish your eating by 8 and all that stuff. Slowly it became my way of life. And super happy about it because, like I said, I've seen so many changes in my body, but also in my energy.
Yeah, and that's key, particularly for the kind of work that you do. And that's the fascinating thing, is like when we sort of reference the magazines and things of that nature, there are protocols that would work and there are ways of doing things that would work on paper, but contextually, given the kind of demands for your kind of work specifically, just because they would work on paper, they actually might be contextually inappropriate. So it's all about finding the methodology that will work, is sort of fundamentally sound, but then also contextually appropriate.
So exactly. And for example, one great benefit I had from this was I always had food at home because I would prepare it on the weekend, okay? And before, if I had the transplant and I was like, I would go to work, let's say at 2 p.m. and I had the 10-hour surgery, I wouldn't have eaten anything during those 10 hours. And then I would go back home and I would eat maybe, like I said, bread and cheese because I was hungry. And of course, I hadn't time to prepare anything. But now I have the food is right there. First of all, I take it with me at work. And I'm like, okay, I usually take a break if I have a 10-hour surgery. And I'm going really quickly in my locker and I eat my dinner. And I go back. And first of all, I'm much more energized during the surgery. And then when I come back home at 3 a.m., I have a full day of meals consumed. And you go to bed better. You are much better the next day to do another big case and everything, as opposed to being like 10 hours without eating anything. So it has affected me way more than just, being more fit and eating proper calories during the day.
And then when you say sort of you were noticing the results, what was it? How would you sort of describe the results that you saw, or when did you first know that you were we were maybe onto something with the way we put things together?
Correct. Okay, so that's very easy to say. So when we started, I was 205 pounds. I'm 6'2", so again, 205 pounds is not, overweight, but there was some love handles around my stomach. I always had some type of. I always all these years, even when I was working out, and I was like, I couldn't get rid of this a little bit, but there was there. I could see the excess fat around my stomach and around the sides. The love handles we have. I had fairly good muscles before, but not very well defined, like I would like them enough. So on the 3-month mark, we were down to 195 pounds. The love handles and everything have completely disappeared. And when we're doing the measurements because remember, I also like to look good. Like I want big muscles, I want big chest, I want big arms. Those measurements were bigger than it was when we started. So to put it very simple, like I started 205, and after 3 months, I was 195 with better measurements, bigger chest, bigger arms and everything, but no more love handles. And also for fun, I decided then to go, our hospital has a department that you can do somatometrics and you can measure your body fat index and everything, the percentage and everything. And I went and did it, and it was 12%. And 12% is pretty low. Like they give you a PDF after you finish this, and it tells the categories. I think between 10 and 5, it's like Olympic athletes or something. Like it's really, the girl was like, wow, this is, and I was like, yeah. So these are the results for the first 3 months.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of the energy level,
correct.
What would you put that down to? The different way of eating, because we took a very recomposition-esque approach. We weren't taking calories off the table, and we weren't taking exercise to the point of exhaustion.
Yes, exactly. I didn't mention that. When I said 295 to 195, 205 to 195, we were eating 3,800 calories a day, which I don't think I was ever eating that many calories before. I mean, like I said, I was never measuring them. But I remember in the beginning, I'm like, oh my God, I have to eat again. I have so many things to eat today because of Scott's diet. And I kept eating. It felt like I definitely was eating more than before, but it was better combination of things and the right things. And now, of course, I'm very used to it. And sometimes I want more because my body used to work this way. And then the level of energy, my level of energy was always much better than before. And I could feel that in certain times a day when before I could feel that my level of my energy level was low. So before, I would wake up in the morning at 6:30 and I would eat something for breakfast. Again, that also had started becoming tiring because I didn't have any more options what to eat in the morning. So I had ended up eating like a slice of bread with peanut butter every day, and maybe a glass of milk again and again and again. I'm like, I need to find something else. It's so boring. So that solved with when I started doing the things together. So, but when I was doing this, I would wake up 6:30, I would eat something. And then I would go to work. And then by 10, 11, I would feel very low. I would need to eat something again, which usually would be some type of pastry, like I would go and get a croissant or something. And then, of course, that would hit my insulin spike. And then after a few hours, I would be more hungry. And that would go, in the morning was like dreadful most of the times. If I had to do surgery in the morning, again, I would eat at home. And then by 10, 11, my stomach would start gargling during the surgery. I would feel very hungry. I would get a little antsy, okay, when I'm going to eat and everything. When I did the intermittent fasting, which is the excellent part of it, is that you can also work out when you're fasting. You can do things when you're fasting. I would bring my breakfast with me. You know, I mean, that is where, because I'm a very organized person. So initially I'm like, how am I going to do this? I'm used to it at 6:30. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make things from night before or in the morning, my breakfast. And then I would pack it in and I'll bring it to work. And then I'll eat it at 10 or 11. The first time I did it, that breakfast, I still remember, it felt so good. Like, first of all, I enjoyed eating it. Enjoying your food is also a very important thing. And that came back to me. While before I was eating the bread and peanut butter in the morning just because I had to put something in my stomach. So 10, 11, when I was eating my breakfast the first time, I'm like, this feels amazing. I really enjoy doing this. But also a couple of times, many times now, after all these years, I had to operate in the morning, and my case starts at 7:30, and it may be a 6-hour case. I only get the coffee in the morning, and I start my case, and I feel super energized throughout my case. I don't feel hungry, even though I haven't eaten since the night before. And then when I finish, it's 1 o'clock. Okay, I'm eating my breakfast. Because again, the great thing about this thing we do is not that you have to eat things in a certain way. You just have to eat things from this time to this time. So I would eat my breakfast, and after 2 hours, I would eat my lunch. I don't mind. And people in the OR were like, okay, you haven't eaten anything since last night and you feel so good. I'm like, I feel amazing. I don't know. It's how my body, I guess, responds to this. So number one, I'm enjoying my food way more. Mindful meditation says we need to take time and enjoy our food. Before it was just I'm putting it in my stomach because I'm supposed to eat at 6 a.m. Number two, I have way more energy in the morning, no cravings. I'm not feeling hungry before I eat my breakfast, nothing. And then high level of energy because of this. And of course, I looked into the intermittent fasting before I decided to do it. All the information is in your site. And I'm 1,000% sold. 1,000%.
Yeah, this is the body just getting more and more efficient, and technically the energy is there to exercise even on an empty stomach. And
oh, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of flexibility with that. And like you say, when you introduce intermittent fasting, even if it's only for 12 hours, you lose the associations where breakfast or this meal has to be breakfast because it constitutes breakfast food, or lunch has to be at this time, dinner has to be at this time. It's just, why don't we just zoom out, take a 24-hour view of the day, and then within that 24 hours, we have a fasting period and we have an eating period. And there's so much flexibility in that, and you never feel pressured. I think sometimes when health and fitness becomes too prescriptive, it can be like, well, this is meal 1 and it's at 10 a.m. Then this is meal 2 and it's at 1 p.m. And
that's daunting. Yeah.
It's daunting. And it's sort of, the fascinating thing is that when you then sort of throw that back to academia and wanting to do well at things, when you start saying, well, you know, now there are 6 opportunities to not do something right because every meal has a timing attributed to it, then it creates
Correct.
references for failure. And I think the flexibility is just so much better.
Yeah. I think it's brilliant. I wouldn't like hearing people saying, you know, they have to eat this amount and measure the calories and everything. First of all, I don't have to measure anything because everything is in my shopping list. So I don't have to worry measuring what I'm eating. I just eat what I'm supposed to eat during the day based on the schedule. But the fact that it took out the whole scene, you have to eat before the workout, you have to eat something right after the workout, you have to do this and everything, for me also worked perfect for my lifestyle. I couldn't be happier about it.
It just as a sort of a broader question, it's sort of in doing my own research for sort of health and fitness in general, the medical profession, particularly in the US, and I would hazard a guess, particularly in New York, there's quite a lot of burnout. It's a high demand profession. So is that something that sort of a program of this nature can buttress you against? Because
100%.
It's fascinating.
100%. It can be burned out. I think it has to do with what I said before. Everything in New York is multiplied. So the amount of cases, for example, I do here as a transplant center is 50 times more than I would do in Greece. And I like that. That's why I'm here. But again, our body and our minds can take so much. So for me, the working out, the looking into my fitness, or spending time looking at my nutrition meal on Fridays when I'm doing my shopping for the next week, is things that they have also a meditative effect on me, which means like it takes me from thinking about other things and work all the time to being in the moment and doing something and being 100% there. It's important. And of course, working out with all the positive effects they have with endorphins and everything in our mind, and as we all know. So yes, 100%, especially in an environment like this, and especially on people who work like me. Someone else would say, but where do you find the time? Actually, because you are working like this and you have very limited time, you must find time to do this. More you than someone else who has a less demanding job. That's how I see it. And I think I'm doing pretty well. Like I see I'm much more relaxed at work. I am more sharp when I need to make some decisions. I see it, and I think it has to do with my body feels okay.
And as you sort of project into the future, do you feel like your sort of relationship to nutrition and exercise has maybe sort of changed in a way, and that you now have a framework where, of course, the meals change, of course, the workouts change, but the framework can serve you for the long term?
Of course. I don't plan to stop it until I die, I think. And also, again, I don't know how close we are to the end, but the thing is, the vanity part, I can also talk about that, even though I don't know how important it is for our conversation. But like I said, I'm 55. And as you probably remember, I also have some serious a problem with my lower back, which happened like in 2015 when I was doing CrossFit and I herniated the disc. And also because of the long-standing hours in the operating room, that also exacerbated the problem. So I was very, very careful, but also that can create a certain limitation. What can you do at the gym, and exactly what can you do, like certain exercises good to avoid? And I was doing very well. As you probably remember, I had one accident when we were together in 2023 January. I was on vacation and I went down a slide and I ran and I fell the wrong way. So it created the problem again, which is very demoralizing because you cannot move. And that lasted for 3 months. And I can say that what kept me going those 3 months was that I stuck very religiously to our nutrition plan. I was working out almost nothing because I could barely do the work. And that and the intermittent fasting, I kept most of my form, like I didn't see me saggy or anything, and I didn't gain weight those 3 months. And of course, going back to working out, it's a great also testament to you that we were able to adjust our workouts so we can have the results. I keep getting better when I look myself in the mirror, even though I had this huge setback back then without accidents. And the accident was, again, not because of the workouts, it was because I fell on a slide, 2023. And the latest thing I can say is that I was talking with some people here in New York that I have met in the gym. And one of them told me that actually, when he saw me at the locker room the other day, he actually thought that I'm doing not just nutrition and working out, that I'm doing something to alter my hormonal levels. Like, there's a lot of underground things going on in the gym culture and all that. And testosterone and anabolic and all that stuff. We all know that these things are out there. And this person told me that actually looked like I have such a nice body that probably he thought that I'm doing something like that. I'm like, no, I'm not doing any of this. I'm just doing this.
So it's a compliment.
It's a huge compliment in our world, maybe in my. But of course, like I said, that's secondary. I want to look a certain way. And remember, again, I'm 55, but the most important thing is where my mood is because of this. The fact that I feel I really achieved something big by able to incorporate this in my life. In 2 years now, it's become part of my routine without any difficulty, although in the beginning I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. And I know I'm definitely doing something good for myself. So
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things there, isn't there? Because like you say, like you're in a high competition environment. So if there are things one can do to maximize our potential in terms of like a health and fitness regime and training, why wouldn't you do them? Because you say like, if I can maximize myself along this dynamic, then the world probably treats me slightly different, rightly or wrongly. That is something that is there to be maximized in a high competition environment. And New
yeah.
York City is nothing if not a high competition environment. So it makes complete sense to have that crossover benefit between. We always know we wouldn't do anything to compromise long-term health, but
No.
there is an aesthetic side to health and fitness. There's no two ways about that. That's why I started. That's why I was interested in health and fitness.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was on the table for me, and then I figured out how to put it on the table, and that felt good.
There's nothing wrong by you want to look a certain way, as long as you know, first of all, why you want it, just because, and also it's like 100% success when this is actually an after result of feeling great and being as healthy as you can be for yourself. Like I think that's like a win-win. I couldn't do it differently.
And it's fascinating because it can go the other way. Like when we talk about like in the context of what you do, there is a high propensity for burnout. So then if you say, okay, well, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger did this workout and it was 6 days a week, twice a day or something of that nature, and then this person is only eating 1,200 calories, and then this person is also running a marathon, and you try to put all of that in place, then the positive initiative of training and focusing on nutrition can actually burn you out further than your equilibrium. So it's just got to be done contextually.
Yes, 100%. You need to put some thought process on it. Like you need to be serious about it and critical about, like I said, what you put in and what information you decide to take and which eventually protocol you go with.
And then also sort of what you said, just sort of going back to what you said about the injury, you had the accident, and it's fascinating because that is one of the key sort of components for I think long-term success with health and fitness is that it's almost a little bit of stoicism. Is okay, something has been compromised, so the physicality has been compromised, but what can I compartmentalize? What can I still have effect on? And that's nutrition. And then the better your nutrition is, you're going to lower inflammation, and recovery from injury is only going to be faster. And then when things are back on the table and you can exercise, you don't have to overcompensate or overcorrect because we had a framework that worked. That the most logical solution is just how soon can we get back on that framework? And we just get back on that framework, and then you'll be back on a long enough timeline to where you started without any overcorrection, because the overcorrection would then push you back into burnout or things of that nature. So, that's why we really try to establish a framework that can be maintained year round.
Yes. And what I want to say about that was, especially the first few weeks, there was nothing left of me to remind me my previous life. Because, like I said, you can move. There's excruciating pain on your leg, and you just have to ride with it until it gets better. So I was at home. I couldn't even walk my dog, obviously. Maybe, but walking, like moving around my apartment, that's okay. So nothing that defines me as me was temporarily, everything was taken. So doing my meals the way I was doing them before was actually, apart from the fact that I want to do it because, again, I didn't want to gain weight and I want to eat the way I was eating, was actually the only thing that kept me to my previous self that I was missing. So it had also like a psychotherapeutic effect on me. I was thinking that nothing, in a way that not everything was lost of me because of this injury. I still do my thing. I would order my groceries online. They would bring them home. I would prepare them, even though I was like moving very difficult and everything. And then when I was sitting down and eating them, I was feeling I was still healthy and fit. And so there was also this part that kept me going. It helped me psychologically not being very depressed, because it can be a very depressed thing, especially when you are used to be as an active person as I am in thousands of ways. especially when your job depends on it, like name it. And that actually helped me a lot. And I didn't gain weight.
So it was like a bridge back to...
Yes, to myself, to who I
Yeah.
am. I thought, because I felt, and people who have been there maybe feel the same, that I was completely, everything I was completely gone. I couldn't move, I couldn't walk my dog, I couldn't sit, play the piano, I couldn't, nothing. So it's like your whole self is wiped out. That is, and can get very, very mentally plays games when something like that happens.
100%, yeah, and it can happen physically, it can happen emotionally, it can happen spiritually. Like when you have those sort of dark night of the soul type moments, sometimes you just need a small bridge back to who you used to be or who you could be, and whatever you can find.
Yeah. And for me, planning the meals and even slower and everything was actually a lifesaver, big time.
Perfect. Well, Antonios, thank you so much for speaking to me. I think it's fascinating. I think because the demands, the rigor of what you do. I think if it's sort of feasible in your scenario, I think it gives a lot of people faith that it'll be feasible in their scenario as well.
100%. Nothing is difficult as long as you want to do it. You find the time, you can organize your mind, and before you realize it, first of all, the results get you going, and before you realize it, you can make part of your routine. Nothing, I've always said that as long as it's something you want to do, and you find a way.
100%. Well, it's been a pleasure working with you so far, and it's been a pleasure talking to you again today.
Absolutely. Same here. Have a good day.